I want to turn to a bit of foreign policy, though, too, because there was a lot of ground covered. And Nick, you and I were talking off camera about this. Interesting back and forth here on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Let's go ahead and play for our viewers, for instance, one of those exchanges. It's soundbite 13, Control Room, if we have that ready.
I can tell you right now, because I have been there with Israeli officials going back more than 25 years, that they do not seek this kind of attacks. They do not invite rockets raining down on their towns and villages. They do not believe that there should be a constant incitement by Hamas, aided and abetted by Iran, against Israel.
I don't think that anybody would suggest that Israel invites or welcomes missiles flying into their country. That is not the issue. And you evaded the answer. You evaded the question. The question is not does Israel have a right to respond, not does Israel have a right to go after terrorists and destroy terrorism. That's not the debate. Was their response disproportionate? I believe that it was. You have not answered that.
Remember, Israel left Gaza. They took out all the Israelis. They turned the keys over to the Palestinian people. And what happened? Hamas took over Gaza. So instead of having a thriving economy with the kind of opportunities that the children of the Palestinians deserve, we have a terrorist haven that is getting more and more rockets shipped in from Iran and elsewhere.
Nick, what are your thoughts on how that played out during the debate?
That exchange, the full Israel-Palestinian exchange was, I thought, by far the most interesting moment of the debate. They actually, it calmed down. They sort of talked to each other a little bit more. And Bernie Sanders laid out pretty clearly a position I have not seen any politician lay out on a national stage ever, which is to say, look, there is a conflict. And really, our sympathies have to be a heck of a lot more with the Palestinians. They are poor. They need our help. I am not always with Netanyahu. It was extraordinary for several reasons. Number one, incredibly rare to do this. Like, occasionally you'll see someone writing a paper in a think tank that says this. You do not see politicians do that. Number two, in that New York Daily News interview, he totally muddled the question of Israel-Palestine and where he stood on that. And he was very clear and precise tonight. So I don't know if it will help him. I can see an argument that will massively help him. I can see an argument that will massively hurt him. But it was very interesting. It was very bold. It was very different.
You wanted to weigh in, Steve?
There are a significant number of pro-Israel Democrats in New York State, probably New York City, and I'm interested to know if that is a roll of the dice with that voting bloc. I think this is a group that knows where Hillary Clinton stands on Israel. They've listened to her for years on this, and they want, I think, to know where Sanders is on this. He hasn't been very detailed on foreign policy. I think this introduction to that voting bloc, I'm not sure that that's the smoothest into that group.
So the polling actually shows the Democratic Party is split on this. And in New York, we have a lot of Muslim Americans in New York who've been marginalized, spied on, severely hurt. I was speaking to someone yesterday who's Palestinian and supports Bernie Sanders because of his Palestinian policy. I actually didn't hear it that he was siding with one or the other. I think he was just trying to look at it fairly. And, he did bring up the point that, Hillary Clinton didn't mention Palestine once during her speech before AIPAC. What this actually reminds me of is I do remember Barack Obama speaking this way in 2008. He was the first politician, Democratic politician I'd heard in many years mention Palestine. And I know several Muslims that supported him because of that. It's been a split issue. It's just there is a very powerful lobbyist group that is more conservative today than it was. And it sides more with the Republican Party when you look at polling. And I think that they've influenced a center of our party. The question is, who's more powerful in the election?
Nancy Cortez, I want to get your thoughts on that and also final thoughts here on the debate.
Well, I think on that issue and on others, one lasting impression that I took away from this debate, I think a lot of people will, is that Bernie Sanders did a pretty effective job at pointing out the number of times that Hillary Clinton did not answer the question. He pointed it out again and again on guns, on her assertion that a lot of guns that are used to commit crimes in New York are coming in from Vermont. She was asked about that multiple times. She didn't say where she got that from. On some of her positions on the environment and on Social Security, he really pushed her on her stance and she refused to be pinned down. So I think, yes, Hillary Clinton did score some points as well. She clearly came in eager to make the case that Bernie Sanders hasn't thought some of his plans through, but he painted a picture of her as evasive. And that is something that could end up sticking with some voters.
All right, my thanks to Nancy Cordes, Steve Chigueras, Linda Tran, Nomiki Konst, and Nick Thompson.